Well, it just does its thing. It won't let me do it in advance. You see, I have to do it whilst the meeting has started. So bear with me. Just checking we're live in the group, which we are. And now I am going to start letting people in on Zoom. So welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome to day one of the challenge. I love doing this challenge. I love doing this. It's been 4 months since I did it last. So I do it 3 times a year now, every 4 months. And a lot of my members who are in my membership do this with us as well, because it's like a little recap. And for whatever reason, they haven't had enough of me yet. So I'm going to start off with a couple of boring housekeeping things, just of things to make sure that I've told you everything that you need to know, what to expect. Just bear with me, I'm just letting people in. I still have to do it manually. Feel free as we go along to pop anything in the comments. If you're on Facebook, in the Facebook group, anything in the chat if you're on Zoom, and I will sporadically have a little look. I won't be able to see everything that pops up because it's just too much for me to focus my brain on. And I'm not very good at multitasking, even worse since I had COVID. My brain fog is definitely worse. So before I get started, tonight you might see that this is streamed on more places than it would be normally. I'm trying out some new software which I've never tried before, and it lets me stream in all sorts of places at once, which is fantastic and is actually really good for a lot of stuff that I do. So I'm testing it out tonight. So it will be also on Instagram just for tonight, and on the main page. Obviously you've got in Zoom, it's different. We've got the private chat here, and within the private Facebook group you've got the private chat. And so if you see it somewhere tonight, the first session, it's because I'm just trying out this new software. But as of tomorrow, so if you are someone that comes across this and quite likes it and wants to do the rest, you'd have to make sure you signed up to the challenge, because as of tomorrow, it will only be in the private Facebook group or via Zoom. So a lot of you have emailed me saying that you're not on Facebook, and is that okay? It's really interesting because last time I did this, I had more people in the Facebook group, but I've realized over the last 12 months, I've been much more present on Instagram than I have on Facebook, and it shows because lots of you aren't on Facebook, but that's fine. We can still enjoy the challenge anyway. So the other thing is the worksheet that you get. To be honest, worksheets go a little bit against what I'm teaching, and I'll explain that as I go along. But I just know that some people just love a worksheet. So due to popular demand, we've done a worksheet. And what I wanted to do is just have it as a piece of paper each day that looks a little bit prettier than a plain piece of paper, with some sections for you to reflect. But I don't want you necessarily to focus on just writing whilst we're doing this, and I'll explain this in tonight's session while we're going along. But one thing I wanted to share is that at the top of each of them is just a little added insight, I suppose, for you just to reflect on. If you're busy and you don't have chance to even look at the worksheet or read the card that I put on the sheet each day, please do not worry. It doesn't matter. It's just a little extra if anybody wants it. You will still get as much out of these 5 days by not even looking at this bit. But what it is, for those of you, it's posted in the Facebook group. For those of you not in the Facebook group, it is on your email. And this is it's a pack of cards that I created. And so myself and Christina picked out 5 at random, for 1 for each day. And it's weird because tonight it's actually links in with what I'm talking about tonight, just very randomly, although Christina might disagree. We are all equally resilient and capable. It's only our thoughts that we are not that holds us back. And then on the back here, it says, we are all equal. We're all resilient survivors as human beings. And yet often we compare ourselves to others and believe that we are somehow not as strong or as capable as them. Just because we have these thoughts doesn't mean they are true. And you're going to hear a lot about this week. We all have our ups and downs, and we all have different ways of dealing with them or showing or not how we are feeling. This is where we differ. Although underneath we are the same, we work in the same way. We don't compare your bike to someone else's car. They both get you from A to B, and irrelevant of the journey along the way, you both have the ability to move and travel. So I'm just letting more people in. Perception is everything, and there are always endless ways of seeing our world. If you don't like the reality or where you are seeing things right now, although we can't always change our external circumstances, we can certainly change our perceptions. So that's a little insight. So if you've got any questions about that, feel free to give me a shout, but I'm going to get started with tonight's little session. Tonight is a little bit of a prerequisite, a bit of an introduction as to what I'm going to be talking about, which is the 3 principles. For those of you that haven't come across the 3 principles before, congratulations, because you're going to love it. Not necessarily me, it's not they're not my principles, I'm not that arrogant, but they were massively life-changing for me, and I know have also been for hundreds, if not thousands, well, yeah, it will be thousands of people. And so what I'm going to do is really give you as much of an insight as I can into these over the next 5 days, but just so that you get the picture, having trained as a psychotherapist for 4 years and learning a lot and, loving my training and everything and, no regrets whatsoever. But now I only coach or work with people using the 3 principles. And the reason for that is that I just couldn't ignore how life-changing they were for me after having also done personal therapy for 10 years plus. Having tried every single trick in the book to fix myself, like there's nothing I haven't tried, I promise you. I have people message me saying, oh, I've used this or I've done that. Have you done this? And I'm like, yep, you name it. There's not many things out there I haven't done and tried. And this was the thing that changed it was the simplest thing. And it was the thing that changed my complete experience of anxiety, my relationship, the way I parent, the success of my business, like literally everything. So that's what I'm going to be pointing you towards for this next 5 days. Now, I'm going to share, do we have to write things down? No, you don't have to write anything down. Just sit back and relax and chill and enjoy. I'm going to explain to you in a minute, actually, why you don't need to write anything down. But I'm going to share my screen with you because I've done a little presentation. So people are saying they're frozen. Is anybody else frozen? Are we okay? We're okay. Okay. If you do freeze and your reception's not great at your end, I'll be sending the recording anyway, so you'll be able to watch it on there. So let me share my screen. Because I was sharing my screen, I just had a quick shufty of my desktop and shoved everything in one folder so that it looked like I wasn't as disorganized and untidy as it looked. Right, so let's have a look. Now, present. Here we go. So what we are looking at and what I'm pointing to, for those of you that aren't aware of it, is the 3 principles originally shared by Sydney Banks. Sydney Banks was a welder in Scotland who had a huge life-changing multiple insights into his own life. And he was then able to put this together as a way of helping other people understand it as best he could. Because what we're really explaining here is something that's not tangible and we can't put our finger on it. So it's actually quite hard, even though it's simple, it's quite hard to explain, but all will become clear, hopefully, over this week. So one thing that's really important is everything this week that I am going to talk to you about is a description, not a prescription or a strategy. Now, that might be bad news to some of you, because some of you, I would imagine, in the same way that I would have come to something like this for a strategy. You want me to say, you do X, Y, and Z, and then you will not feel anxious or overwhelmed, and your relationship will thrive, and this will happen. But I don't have strategies and techniques for you. So apologies, but it's not really apologies, because the reason it's so important is, if, like me, you have potentially already tried a number of strategies, techniques. If we went on Google now and we searched for techniques and strategies to reduce anxiety and stress and overwhelm, there's hundreds on there. Some that have worked for some people, some that have worked for others, some that work sometimes and not all the time. And I'm going to help you understand this week why that works sometimes and why it doesn't. Why sometimes listening to relaxation might feel good and then other times it makes you feel worse. The key to getting change, getting out of your own way, listening to your own bullshit that you tell yourself to keep yourself stuck, the key to that is really about understanding what I'm going to describe to you this week. So I'm not giving you a strategy because this is better. Because actually, understanding this will mean that when these strategies that you have to soothe yourself or self-care or whatever it is are not working so well one day for you, you're not going to go into a complete panic and overwhelm, because you're going to understand that actually this is happening and it's not as scary as you might believe. So I want you to see it like a story that you're listening to. And this is what I mean. Like, you don't need to use a pen and paper. If you were listening to a story, then you wouldn't need to write something down. You just accept that as you turn the pages, you might drift off in parts of it. You might not fully understand it all, but you're not necessarily going to keep going back. You're just going to keep going because you're just going to try and get the overall story. And that's what I want you to get from this week. As I've said here, strategies are nice ideas, but if you're in a zone, if you're in a state of mind where you're overthinking everything, then you're going to overthink even these strategies that some people say are helpful. So I never forget when that first time I had hypnotherapy, and I trained as a hypnotherapist. So I used to do this a lot. I'd try something and then I'd train in it because I think maybe I need to understand it more in depth for it to work for me. So I'd go to the extreme where I'd then go and train in it. So, you know, CBT, DBT, NLP, hypnotherapy. I'm trained as transactional analysis psychotherapist. Like, I have got lots of certificates, but was still finding myself overwhelmed in a cycle at least every 18 months where I'd be off work for 3 months and just really honestly couldn't function. So I remember going in for hypnotherapy, and I put so much pressure on the hypnotherapy being the thing that worked for me. And I'd spoken to so many people and loved the training where they were saying, yes, this has changed my life. And I'm thinking, well, if it's changed their life, surely it's got to change my life. And it was one of the last things that I tried before I came across the three principles. So it was almost felt like my last hope. If this doesn't work, then I'm doomed. I've got to just live with this for the rest of my life. If this doesn't work, I'm never going to be successful in business because I'm always going to work hard and then I'm going to burn out and lose all my clients in between. So for me, I put so much pressure, expectation, and hope on this being the thing that would finally change it for me. I worked myself up so much. I drove all the way to Scotland from Manchester, spent hours in the car. I think I paid something like £500 for the session because I went for the best person in the industry that was meant to be the one to fix me. This isn't a criticism of him, by the way. But as soon as I got in there and he started to work with me, the room was spinning. And now I know the room was spinning because I was putting so much pressure and expectation on this working that I was overthinking massively. So I felt dizzy and overwhelmed. And I felt that overwhelmed that I had to just open my eyes and say to him, I can't do it. And that was the end of the session. So then I got back in the car from Scotland with a 4.5-5 hour drive ahead of me, the whole way thinking, I am a joke. This has now failed for me. That was my fault. I couldn't even do that right. There's no hope. And sadly, that's how I felt. And then I came across the three principles and everything changed. Thankfully, thank God. So, we've already had that, haven't we? So what are the three principles? Now, I don't want you to get too caught up on the words and, you know, what it is. Because if you get too lost in your intellect of understanding these three principles, you're going to take yourself away from properly listening, and you're just going to get caught up in, I don't get this and I don't understand. So you don't have to understand all of this, and it doesn't have to make sense straight away. Just be open-minded and to listen. So I don't know what I was trying to put there. I've spelt that wrong, whatever it is. The only way, I need to change that. The only way that I'll talk about this is through my truth, my experience and my insights. And I do this a lot through metaphors. So I'm not going to, it's not going to be like a lesson each day where we turn up and go, right, now we're doing this section and that section. I'm just going to share lots of different examples and metaphors, because again, if we get too caught up in structure and intellect, then we will find that we just go completely off in our head trying to figure stuff out, and we miss things. So the next 5 days, I'm going to talk about, in a roundabout way, about mind and thought. And then the masterclass, which is the beginning of next week, to give people a chance to catch up over the weekend, I'm going to do a recap, and I'm going to talk to you about the consciousness part. Okay, so mind. We're not talking about the brain here. We're not talking about mind in the sense that we often hear it or see it or understand it. When we're talking about mind, we're talking about the universal intelligence to life. Not the little personal mind or the ego we get caught up in, but our wisdom and our innate well-being. So, for example, I struggled with this in the beginning because, so for some people, this is God, actually. If you have a faith, for you, this is this God, this thing it's like a knowing, something bigger than you at play, where you realize you are one small drop in a huge ocean. We are one small part of this vast universal intelligence of life. You don't have to believe in a God to have access to mind. It might just be, so for me, I would class myself actually as a lot more spiritual now, or certainly going in that direction. But when I started this, I wouldn't have classed myself as that. I would have classed myself as, I don't even know, atheist feels like a strong word, but I was brought up Catholic, but I didn't believe, and I didn't follow any religion or any faith. But what I did know, just through being alive and being a human being, is that there's a knowing that there is something bigger at play. I don't know what that is or what it looks like, and I don't need to, it doesn't matter. So one of the biggest examples for me that I always share is, I always remember being pregnant with my child, and I'd have these little moments where I'd go, how on earth am I growing a child in my stomach? Like, it's just mad. It's crazy. I don't really have to do anything. Like, I laugh about this. Like, I know I had to do something to get the child there in the first place, but that wasn't that hard work. It wasn't a big full-time job. And so once the seed has been planted, so to speak, it was all then taken care of. All I would say is that my stomach just got bigger and bigger. And yet all of those phenomenal things that were happening and taken care of. In the same way that you don't wake up in the morning and have to tell your lungs to fill with air. They just do. You don't have to press a switch in the morning to get your heart to beat. It's just all happening. One of the examples children always find quite fun is when you talk about that they, how phenomenal is it that we can eat something, our body, by its own accord, this universal intelligence to life, basically takes out all the nutrients, keeps them, and then it puts the rest through our intestines, then we go to the toilet and we have a poo. Like, it sounds like we're nothing because we all do it every day, but actually it's all really amazing. And I've never met anybody yet that's not caught up in overwhelm and stress and anxiety that hasn't lost sight of all of this stuff. You start to lose faith in your body and your ability to be resilient. It's like you don't believe you have access to this innate wisdom, well-being, this universal intelligence. It's like that doesn't exist anymore, but it never goes anywhere. So when people will come to me and say, well, I'm really severe, Sari, do you think you could help me? And my answer is always yes. And the reason the answer is always yes is because underneath, right at the core, we work in the same way. So just because some of us have got more lost in our thinking and taken ourselves away from that doesn't mean it's not there. And it doesn't matter how long you've felt you've been away from that. So I was anxious. When I was in hospital for a month in my early 20s, I'd taken myself completely away from my innate well-being. I didn't believe I had any. I thought I was broken. I thought there was all sorts of things wrong with me. And now looking back, I see that's not true. But at the time, it felt like it was because I was so caught up in my mind and my thoughts. So when stressed, overwhelmed, or stuck, you are in the personal mind or your ego, and you've lost sight of the universal intelligence of life, such as universal intelligence and innate well-being is, the words don't really matter in a way, but everyone will describe it differently. So if anyone that comes to me and wants help or wants support, they might say, oh, I want to feel happy again, or I just want to be content, or I want to feel peaceful and calm. We all have our own version and words of what that looks like. But regardless of whether we call it happiness or contentment or peace of mind, this is what we're talking about, is this innate well-being that is accessible to all of us. It's never missing. You might just be looking in a different direction, which is why you're not seeing it. I'd love to know in the comments, if you don't mind, what is that for you that you're searching for? It's different for all of us in terms of the words we use. As I say, some people say happiness. Some people will say, to feel relaxed or whatever it is. I'd love to know in the comments what that is. for you? Let me see if I can see these coming up. Trust, yeah, contentment and peace. I'm not frozen in the US. I wish I was in the US, you know, not frozen, actually in the US. Peace, relaxed, calm, happy, sense of calm. Okay, good. So peace of mind. What we're talking about here then is connecting back to that innate well-being that is at our core. And I'm so tempted to keep using examples, but I'm going to wait because, again, we have a whole day, like a whole night dedicated to this, really. So I'm just not going to get too ahead of myself. So whatever it is, however you word whatever it is you're looking for. So this is interesting. I'm just going to speak to this question now, actually, while it comes up, because it's such a common question. And I'm not going to fully answer it, but I'm going to point you in the direction, and you will be able to answer this for me yourself by the end of the week. Because the question is, did you find out why you first became anxious? This is what I can't get my head around. This is part of the problem for most people. They want answers as to why, how, what led to it, all the things that we believe we need to know in order to fix it and to reverse it. We can't reverse it. We can't go back in time. And you don't need to know those answers. I do now see why, but it's not specific details like this happened and that happened and this led to this and this led to. I just know how human nature works now, and therefore I know why I got overwhelmed. And that's what you will also know by the end of this week. And I'd be interested in your view at the end, if you would share as to what you feel now about getting your head around knowing why. I'd be interested at the end of the week to see how you think about that. And then someone said here, not to be afraid of my emotions is what they want. And this is another thing that we do that's really common. We go, I don't want this. I don't want to feel anxious. I don't want to be scared of my emotions. But yet we never really know, or we don't often know, well, what do you want? What will it look like when you're not doing that? Because it's much easier to get closer to peace of mind or contentment when we're looking in that direction of what it is that we want to feel instead. So you will notice this week that I do get a little bit sidetracked. So I just put into the internet earlier amazing nature things. I can't remember what I put. Searched amazing things in nature. I know these are like extreme cases, but there's so many of these, like literally universal intelligence of life is everywhere. We see it everywhere. You see it in the car on the school run. You see it on your way to work. You see it when you look out of the window from your bedroom, when you see the moon at night. We are constantly surrounded by this. And yet when we are so stuck in our head and so caught up in what we think to be true, it's like we blinkered from all of that. But it's everywhere. Evidence or that something is guiding us in life. You know, how do we know right from wrong? Partly based on what people are telling us, but we know, even if we've never been told, we know, don't we? We're instinctively, our gut instinct is a wonderful part of this universal intelligence of life that guides us. The difficulty for a lot of people is hearing it, because if you are very noisy in your mind and your critical thinking and your overthinking is really loud, it's going to drown out that gut and that wisdom. So habitually, we often keep looking in the same direction for answers. And really, for us to get a change in perspective and to see things differently and therefore stop suffering and access peace of mind more frequently, we need to be more open-minded and we need to be curious. So that's why I love you to ask as many questions as you want, or as you have along this process, because that's how you will learn. The reason I put this image on here is because I want to give you the example of if anybody saw the live I did with Suzanne Shaw last night, you'll have heard me talking about this, but I'm going to talk about it again anyway. Say you walked up and down the street and you suddenly realize you've lost your car keys, and you start to think, well, where on earth have I lost them? Like, I had them when I left the house. I've only walked up and down the street, so they must be up and down this street. what's probably going to happen is you're going to go straight to where the light is to look for the keys, when those keys can be anywhere along that street. And the chances of them actually just being underneath that light are very slim, because it's a big long street and a lot of it is in darkness. The reason we go to the light is because it's familiar. It's somehow easier and more comfortable, because we feel like, you know, oh, okay, I can do this more comfortably. And yet the keys might be just a little bit up that way, but they're in the darkness, where it's like we're not really sure how to look in the darkness. And that's what starting this experience of understanding this stuff is often like. So, for example, as a trained therapist, what I would do when I heard something in the 3 principles was compare it to what I thought I already knew as a therapist. Try to link it to what I already thought I knew. So I kept going back in the direction of where I'd already been, looking for more of the same answers and getting the same results, which was no relief from anxiety and overwhelm. It was only when I was able to step out of that light and that familiarity and that kind of safe space, then I was able to see something different. So someone's asking here, when you say curious, do you mean to work out what has happened to make you feel anxious in that moment? No. Being curious is, there's nothing attached to being curious. So we're not curious to get an answer. We're curious just sitting back open-minded, oh, this is interesting. Or if I'm curious about my thought process, I might think, oh, I notice I do that a lot on a Tuesday. Don't need to know why I do that a lot on a Tuesday. I don't need to go, oh, is that because Monday nights are difficult? Or is that because I have this client on a Tuesday? Or is that because I had that for my tea on Wednesday? All of that, getting into that detail and looking for answers external to us, is taking us in the wrong direction. So when I say curious, it's open-minded. When a client says to me, if I ask a client a question, they say, oh, I don't know, that excites me. They want to know, but when they say they don't know, it excites me, because I know they're going to get curious. And I know that when they don't know, that means what might come next is something new they didn't know before. And with new insight and new perception comes change. One of the ways to remember about being curious, what I always say to people, is get curious, not cross. Because sometimes when something happens and we go, oh, why is that happening? But you're getting cross, you're getting frustrated. Oh, I'm sick of this. I can't go on like this. Why do I always do this? I need answers. I need to get to the bottom of it. You're getting cross and frustrated. And that in itself is even more anxious thinking. And you're going to feel more overwhelmed. So instead, it's curiosity. Oh, isn't it interesting how I always get anxious in the morning? Because what happens when we get curious and we're open-minded and we're curious, the mind does actually quieten a little bit. And that's where our gut instinct and wisdom will come and go, oh, actually, I realize what's happening here. So it's not about getting bogged down in the detail. And that's why I say here, you may feel discomfort not knowing, but not knowing is more positive than you realize. Because people come, and this is why people get, it always makes me laugh, because people come to me and they get frustrated, and at the end of the session they'll say, so have you just got any strategies that you can just give me for this week? I say, no, I'm really sorry, I can't. Because we know in our gut what works for us and what strategies work for us. And, you know, it's very easy for us to focus and get fixated on that, because we're so used to it, and it's a habit, like it's become so habitual. So we'll be talking a bit about habits this week. I'll be talking about compassion with yourself. I will be telling you about how your thoughts create your feelings, and I'll be exploring some of that with you. I'll also be talking quite a lot about fear and panic, and then what happens physically in our bodies. So we're going to be covering a lot of stuff. And again, there will be the temptation as you go through to go, but I need this answer now. I just encourage you to be interested and curious, that you feel this sense of urgency, but it's okay to not know just now. Let's have a look. Feeling anxious. Okay, so say curious. Okay, we've got that. someone's saying there they went down a rabbit hole trying to find many possible reasons. Yeah, if you think about it, let's just say I woke up tomorrow and felt really anxious. Would it be unusual? Because that doesn't happen anymore. I just sometimes feel a bit anxious, but it doesn't last very long. So for me to wake up straight away and feel anxious would be unusual. So let's just say I did. The last thing I would do is try and figure out why. I would notice and go, oh, okay, I feel anxious. And I suppose it's easier for me to do that now because I don't fear anxiety. And that's the other thing, that exploring these principles takes that fear away. So do I ever get anxious? Yeah, of course I do. I'm human. If I panic or forget something or if I suddenly go, oh shit, I'm supposed to pick my daughter up from school and I'm late, I will go into a little bit of a fight or flight. But it doesn't escalate like it used to, because that feeling and that sensation doesn't scare me. I know it's a normal physical reaction to what I've just told my brain. But I will be covering all of this over this 5 days. So another thing that I want to just mention before we finish up is I do a little competition when I do these challenges. And I give away journals, books, packs of insight cards, and I give away coaching sessions with me too. And the reason I do it, I'm very transparent, is I want you to do this challenge and I want you to stick at it all week, because I know you'll feel better if you do. So I want to incentivize you, because I want you to do it and go, that was really good, Sari, I loved it. Give me good feedback and tell all your friends. So that's my incentive, is to get you to do that. So what I do is I do a little competition and just say, I'll do a thread in the Facebook group after every session. Just comment on it, tell me how you found it, so I know that you've watched it. If you're watching on catch up, that's also fine. Just let me know before the end of the week that you've caught up. If you're not on Facebook, just drop me a quick email with how you found it, just so I can log that you're here. And then what I do at the end is, on the masterclass, I just randomly pull out names of everyone that's attended and just give away some prizes. So even if you're on catch up, you can get to the end of the week and catch up, you can still be included. So yeah, let me just check down here. Sorry, I can't always see the questions straight away. You have me curious already. Good. Well, that's all I aimed for tonight. It's very tempting for me to run over on these and give more information, and I get all carried away, but I do have a plan to follow, and it is important for me not to also then overwhelm people with too much. So tomorrow I'm going to be doing about thoughts. So we're going to be doing thoughts, how they create our feelings, and then sometimes how we behave as a result, just so we can understand a little bit more about what's happening with us. There's one of my members. Just sit with that curiosity. Yes. There's a lot of my current members also in the Facebook group who you will find will probably answer questions, because they're all really good. So thank you so much for all of you that have joined me this evening. You may find that you have questions. I would encourage you just to let them go, actually, in one sense, and just see. They might get answered throughout the week. If it's really bothering you and really bugging you, write it down, but then let it go. I don't want you going over any of this in your head. I want you to just show up, be curious, be interested, and then leave it alone, because it will all become clear as we go throughout the week. So thank you so much, and I will look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 7 again. When we will talk about our thoughts, which is a big major part of all of this, the crux of all of it, because we can't control our thoughts, and often we think that we do, and we can't. So I'm going to help you see that a little bit more, because us trying to control our thoughts creates so much suffering that is really, really unnecessary. So thank you so much, everyone, and I will see you tomorrow. I'll go and post over in the Facebook group in a minute. I just need to nip and do something first, but I will be there shortly. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye.